our last public hearing of the week, the Medicine Hat public hearing of the Electoral Boundaries Commission. I want to introduce the commission. First of all, my name is Justice Dallas Miller. I serve as the chairman of the commission, and I also serve as a justice of the Court of King's Bench. And to my immediate left is Susan Sampson, longtime resident of Sylvan Lake and an experienced municipal politician. She served a term as mayor and some terms as councillor of Sylvan Lake. Susan volunteers in the community, and for that volunteer activity has been recognized as Citizen of the Year of Sylvan Lake, and she's also recipient of the Queen Elizabeth II Diamond Jubilee Medal. To her left is Mr. John Evans, KC, a lawyer from a province-wide firm known as Stringham. He works out of their Lethbridge office, but does conduct trials throughout Alberta. His legal ability has been recognized by way of receiving the King's Counsel designation, or KC. John also volunteers as a member of the Judicial Nominating Committee of Alberta. To my immediate right is Dr. Julian Martin from Sherwood Park. Dr. Martin is a retired history professor from the University of Alberta with all his advanced degrees received from Cambridge University. Dr. Martin has volunteered on many committees in his community in Edmonton and Sherwood Park over the years, and has served on some quasi-judicial bodies in the province of Alberta. At the far end of the table is Mr. Greg Clark, an entrepreneur and consultant focusing on information and knowledge management. Greg is from Edmonton, and we benefit from his experience as he was a former MLA for the riding of Calgary-Elbow. He too is a recipient of the Queen Elizabeth II Platinum Jubilee Medal. Currently, Greg serves as the chairman of the Balancing Pool of Alberta and advises and consults widely with organizations relative to proper governance. We are your Electoral Boundaries Commission, and we can tell you that this is our third week on the road. We've covered much of southern Saskatchewan, starting in Pincher, southern. Wow, it's a long 3 weeks. Southern Alberta. Yeah, we're not extending into Saskatchewan. Yeah, we didn't get the funding approval, unfortunately. So we started in Pincher Creek, Lethbridge, and we've been to Edmonton and parts around Edmonton, Calgary this week, Brooks yesterday, and here we are in Medicine Hat today. The most beautiful part of the province, I've tried to tell my fellow commissioners, so we've seen some highlights in Medicine Hat yesterday, which we truly appreciate. By the way, when I was thinking of my introductory remarks 2 weeks ago, I was hoping to congratulate the city of Medicine Hat, unfortunately, but congratulations to a fine showing at the Memorial Cup. It wasn't completely successful, but you certainly put the city on the map the last several weeks. So we are your commission, and next week we have our final week in Northern Alberta, and we conclude on June 23rd. And then let me walk through the details of the days ahead for us. So the Electoral Commission is bound by the Electoral Commissions Act, and in that legislation, the Alberta legislature has expanded the number of seats. Currently, there's 87. They've authorized this commission to draw boundaries for a total of 89 seats across the province. The timeline for our commission is helpful for the public to know. First of all, in late March of this year, the Speaker of the Legislature appointed this commission, and from the time of appointment going forward, we're on a clock. So in April, we met for a couple of weeks as a commission to decide process, talk about schedule, and then we started our public hearings in late May, and of course all of June we're traveling the province. When we finish our public hearings in late June, it's our task then to deliberate and to consider the information we've heard from public hearings, consider the population data that we have, consider the existing boundaries, and then in turn come up with what's come to be known as an interim report. The deadline for that interim report is late October. That will be filed with the Speaker's office and it will be made public. You will then be able to look at that report and grade us in a sense and give us feedback. And we then have a further round of public hearings throughout November to February, and we take the input from those public hearings and work on a final report, which must be submitted to the Speaker by late March of 2026. And of course, I'm not telling you folks anything new. You're obviously engaged and interested in the process. In Alberta, we have currently 87 ridings, soon to be 89 ridings, and one member per electoral division, and the individuals living in that division elect that particular MLA. It's helpful for us to get some perspective as to what happened the last time there was an Electoral Boundaries Commission. And of course, as you probably know, every 2 election cycles, or every 8 to 10 years, the province of Alberta is obligated by legislation to conduct a review of its boundaries through the Electoral Boundaries Commission process. In 2017, the previous commission issued a report, and that report was based on a population of Alberta of just over 4 million people. We are now basing our report on a population of 4.8 million people. And I'll talk about the population and how we arrive at it and how we ascertain or determine the population in a second. So in 2017, the previous commission dealt with a formula, as you see on the screen right now. They took the population of 4,062,609, divided it by 87 ridings, and the mean average is shown there at just over 40 or just under 47,000. That's not the target. The target is a range of -25 of that average or +25. That's the target under Canadian law that we are authorized to use. We do not operate in Canada on the principle of one person, one vote. That's an American concept. Rather, we have a slightly different approach. So that's what happened in 2017. What we're looking at this time around for our Electoral Boundaries Commission, the population we're using is as of July 2024. Now, the Act requires us to go back to rely on the most recent decennial census. That census, the last census was 2021. So it's not really reasonable to just rely on that census. The feds do a census by the Constitution every 10 years, but practically they do it every 5 years. So the next census wouldn't be until 2026. We can't wait that long. So we take the 2021 census, and what most people don't realize is Statistics Canada updates that regularly, updates that information regularly across the country. And the Alberta Treasury Board also does its own assessments and validates the figures from the federal government. The best figures that we have in terms of population, in terms of verification and validation, are as of July 2024. And that's the figure, 4,888,723. And I know that there's news reports that have come out since we've assessed and looked at population numbers that have said Alberta's population may be over 5 million, and that all estimations or all census data is, in a sense, an estimation, but we are relying on that figure of 4.8 million. And when you look at the average over 89 constituencies, it's almost 55,000 per constituency. And again, the target rate is -25 to +25, and so those figures are the target rates that we'll be relying on. With the intense population growth in the province, the challenge for us is the population hasn't grown equally across the province. So we have to sort out how we deal with the boundaries and take into consideration that population growth. As I said, we do not rely on the principle of one person, one vote. Rather, Section 3 of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms that deals with democratic rights, and as interpreted by the Supreme Court of Canada, talks about Canada as having the principle of effective representation. And we'll talk about how we arrive at that in a second. The legislation provides several principles for us as a commission to come up with the goal of effective representation. First, the relative sparsity and density of populations. Obviously, we take that into consideration. We also take into account issues of common community interest, and I've noticed in some of the submissions, people really focus on that, and that's an important factor as well. Geographic features, particularly for constituencies outside of Calgary and Edmonton, geographic features are something that we have to take into consideration and utilize in order to do our job. Communication and transportation lines across the province are also a consideration for us to determine boundaries. Our goal is to ultimately come up with a proposal that provides understandable and clear boundaries, electoral boundaries for Albertans. Finally, the legislation does give us the authority or the ability to take into consideration other factors that we may think are important or necessary or add value to our ultimate recommendation. That's where the public comes in. Albertans, we want to hear from you. We want input locally. We can't be in every constituency. I'm not sure how many cities or towns we've been in, but we have done our best to canvass the province and hear from people. I have to say that of medium-sized centers, the attendance here tops the charts. We have more people in the opening session here than I think we've had in Calgary, any of the Calgary sessions. So hats off to Medicine Hat. You obviously are engaged, and it's been a fantastic exercise for us. We have learned about the province. We've heard contradictory and conflicting submissions. We've heard very interesting submissions. We've heard and learned so much about the province, and we're not even close to being finished. So kudos to Medicine Hat for having the turnout you have. This is the current map of electoral divisions in Alberta, and we will bring up the local constituencies here in a second. Our task is to take that map, create 89 boundaries where there is currently 87. And this is part of the process of us hearing from Albertans. We want to hear from you. And so we've got a full list this morning. Again, probably the most, not only the most well attended, but the best subscribed of presenters. And so I'm going to start right away. Those are my comments. I've introduced the commission to you. We ask the presenters to come up when I call them. All I ask is you introduce yourself, tell us roughly where you live, and begin your presentation. We do have a bit of a time limit. You've probably been told that it's a 7-minute time limit with 3 minutes for questions and discussion. There is a light there, so our administrator of the commission, Aaron Roth, who will wave. If you have any written submissions you want to leave with us, leave them with Mr. Roth. He's administering the time. There's no trap door, but I will be forced to cut you off if it goes on too long. So thank you, everyone. Our first presenter is Holly Turnbull. Holly, would you please come forward? Yeah, have a seat at the non-laptop because we may need help every once in a while from the tech people. So.
Okay. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thanks for hearing me this morning. It's exciting to have you here. I want to start with a brief intro, maybe to give you a sense of who I am.
Please.
So I live in Cypress County, but my business is in Medicine Hat. I'm a mother of 4, and I'm a registered psychologist. I have experience working with the Canadian Armed Forces, as well as experience with the province and working with the feds. So a bit of a diverse background. I'm coming to present to you this morning, though, as a mom and a business owner. Our 4 children have attended in multiple different school divisions, from Prairie Rose to the City of Medicine Hat to the Catholic Division. We have some really wonderful people in this part of the province. It is truly spectacular. And what I would love to highlight for you is just that I understand that when we look at the data, the diversity on paper, it doesn't look like it's a very diverse part of the province, but the people here are truly unique. And so we get everyone from legacy farms to those who have been unable to inherit and take over those farms and have been forced to innovate and create something bigger. And so it is really inspiring. I'm an optimist, so I see Medicine Hat growing exponentially in the near future. When we first moved here, the 120 south of the city was destined to be the ring road. And people laughed when I took that into account when I chose where we were going to live, but it's going to happen. We'll grow eventually, and it will one day become the ring road. Not many people are aware of that plan here. I don't know if that still is the plan moving forward, but the 120, and right now it's South Boundary Road that is used as the south boundary for a lot when we reference things. The other thing that I foresee is we ended up choosing to raise our family just west of the city on the 523. It barely shows up on the map right now, but there is a substantial group of community out there. I would say probably 250 people within 5 miles of where our house is located. And so when we do need to mobilize, and the most recent issue was when they were going to put a greenhouse the size of Aurora just adjacent all of our houses, and we were like, this is not appropriate. You can't cover irrigated land with cement, and nothing against greenhouses, but this is not the right location. There's lots of us there. Most of us live in the county and work and have businesses in the city. So when we take into account both the geographic, the map, I guess, and different transportation routes that offer a relatively logical boundary, I'd love to see Highway 523 become one, down to Highway 3. And the other part of this is when we look at the interests of hatters, it took me some time, but I officially now consider myself a hatter, even though I live in the county, because I am allergic to lineups. And so there's more than 2 people in that line. I'm not going. And that is unique here in Calgary. We would spend half an hour waiting to get gas at Costco. That does not happen here in Medicine Hat. We go elsewhere. And so when we take into account the culture of the people in this part of the province, it is very different. And just because we live in a city or very close to a city within 13 kilometers as our house, it doesn't really mean that we have the same culture as other cities in Alberta. And then I guess the last piece that I wanted to offer to you is just the people who live in this part of the province, we're used to driving a lot. And so we've got kids in swim, in hockey, and in basketball. We don't like to waste our time trying to figure out maps. So making this very simple and making it logical, I think, is in everyone's best interest. The City of Medicine Hat, if it continues to grow the way that I foresee, I think that we will, I didn't actually realize that the goal was for 54,000 plus or minus 25%. So that is a bit different than the numbers I was working with to make a recommendation here. But if we go from the 120 on the south end up 13th Ave, up to Highway 1, the Trans-Canada, follow it moving west, and then we make a split. I want to say, hang on. We carry the 41A, which nobody knows of here as the 41A highway. It's Gershaw Drive that takes you to downtown. But if we then follow that to Division North up to the river, then the river can, moving forward, everything north of the river can fall on one side, and everything south of the river and east can fall on the other. But I do think it's important to separate Medicine Hat from the outside areas of Medicine Hat. because I don't know. I'm a pretty big optimist, but I do foresee our population down here growing substantially. We have the most hours of sunlight of anywhere in Canada. And we've had so much innovation in this part of the province just in the last calendar year. So there's nothing formal, but that's my 2 cents.
Well, thank you very much, Ms. Turnbull. I'm going to turn it over to the commission, but just so I have a mental picture, you're suggesting Highway 120 up 13th Avenue as a boundary. What happens, where do we go from the end of 13th Avenue?
To the number 1 highway.
Oh, just to the highway, just the number, and then over to Gershaw. Oh, okay.
Yeah, and what it ends up giving us, according to, and it's hard for me to find population data for each of the sub-communities within the city of Medicine Hat, but that would give us 31,858 for the north side of Medicine Hat, 31,160 for the south and east portion, which divides the city up pretty much in half. I didn't include the numbers for that collection of individuals who lived out on the 523, between 523 and Highway 3, but there are lots in that area as well.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Clark. If you want to do you have any questions?
I do, yeah. Thank you very much for that submission. One of the, as Justice Miller noted, our part of the arithmetic challenge we have with Medicine Hat, maybe a little unlike Lethbridge or Red Deer, which have sort of a nice population that allows us to have 2 urban constituencies. Medicine Hat's growing, it's not there yet. So inherently, we need to have some sort of carve out of Medicine Hat itself, one way or the other. Right now, it's split down the middle, not quite at the river. This interesting notch here on the south side, of which we have received some feedback, and perhaps we'll receive some more. Don't want to anticipate, but some of the written feedback has been rather specific on that. So we'll take that as a given. So I guess I'm curious if, and just to make sure I'm hearing what you're saying let's have an urban, quote unquote, Medicine Hat that is sort of contiguous, and then kind of a blended Medicine Hat and somewhere else. I mean, interestingly, that's how Grand Prairie is. First off, that's what I heard, but I just want to make sure that's actually what you're saying.
So I consider myself a Hatter.
Right.
But I live in the county.
Okay. And would you say that is specific to your proximity to Medicine Hat because you've talked about the ring road and you anticipate at some point that's probably Medicine Hat? Is that what you're thinking?
My grandchildren are like buying houses absolutely by then. I foresee that will happen within the next 4 years. They're not going to make the 120 into the ring road. However, I do think it's important that we make those boundaries logical, and when we're accounting for future growth, that helps frame everyone's concept of what this constituency, that's not the right word, but this group of people where we live. Right. So I'm 13 kilometers from my office right now. I could bike there if I wanted to. Same distance as how far I worked from my home when I lived in Calgary. But right now, I'm considered a resident of the county, and I own a business and operate it.
Would you mind, if you don't mind, maybe just grabbing the microphone that's on the table there? Would you mind just going to the map and kind of pointing at what you're talking about, just so I get a mental picture, please?
Yeah.
Where Highway 120 is. No.
You have to bring that up a little bit, Aaron.
Cypress.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, Cypress mentioned that.
Yeah.
Oh, right there.
But it's not detailed enough.
There it is. Oh, there we go. Zoom in on the top right. Yeah, just sort of point at it.
Yeah, just.
Oh. There we go.
Yeah. Okay, so Dunmore, you can take just south of south of Dunmore, there is a road that will bring you down to the 120. It's about here-ish, and it will take you all the way back, like the back road. For any of the EcoView students, they can take this back road out to Highway 3, and lots of them live out here between the 523 and Highway 3.
Is that the highway that connects 3 with 1? That's the 120.
Yes.
Okay, I know which one it is.
It doesn't directly bring 3 to 1, but it is the back
right.
road.
Right.
So
That's how you
something
get
happening
there.
in the city. That's
It's just south of here.
Right.
Okay.
So really, you're saying the south and west portion of what is the city of Medicine Hat would be sort of a natural kind of area that likely over time. And is that the direction Medicine Hat is growing, you would say, or is it sort of growing really everywhere?
Yeah. So I don't work in construction, so I don't really know, but I did used to inspect in the area of construction when I worked with the province. And in the south area, so Southridge, Southlands, it was exploding. It has been considerably. I will say that there's lots of areas within Medicine Hat that are being revitalized as well, but the growth of new houses, certainly on the south end of the city and just outside of city limits.
Right, okay.
Is substantial.
And I'm grabbing my phone here not to check a text, but I just want to do some quick arithmetic on some. So, and again, I apologize, Justice. I just want to ask one more question. That one of the, Alberta's growing incredibly quickly. And so what we think about is both absolute growth, how fast somewhere has grown, you know, from 2016, 2017 till now, but also relative to the rest of the province. And so this is the math I'm trying to figure out. Medicine Hat's grown about 7% or so in this time, and I think the province has probably grown slightly more. And when Medicine Hat, both the constituencies were conceived, they were quite a little bit above the average, and now they're bang on exactly average. So the province itself has grown a little bit quicker than Medicine Hat, which isn't to say that's actually not a good or a bad necessarily, but just to give you some where we're situating ourselves in terms of, you know, one of the considerations, by no means the only one, but I just wanted to maybe share that thought with you as well.
Absolutely. I think that is definitely known and is mindful of those who move here in particular. So knowing we will be represented is important. And so when we're trying to attract doctors, professionals to move to our community, it is really difficult when they get the sense that half of our voice is trying to speak on behalf of the more rural population versus those who live in a more urban setting. There are fundamentally different priorities for those populations.
I suspect my colleagues will probably ask you a little more about that, so I'll turn it down the road.
Fellow commissioners, we've got a full schedule today. I'm going to have to hold the gavel a little bit, so very one question, clear and concise, and to the presenter.
No cues sounds very attractive, but I'm struck by the fact that you live outside the town per se and travel in. So for you in your life experience, it is a very permeable boundary. And you suggest that's true for many people that you know?
All of my neighbors immediately surrounding us.
So that suggests to me that Medicine Hat has a permeable boundary and shouldn't try to be considered as a thing in and of itself.
Well, drive 20 kilometers down the road to the best bakery in Alberta in Bow Island, and it's very different.
Oh, no, I don't doubt it at all, but I'm just, you know, people are living out of the town and working in the town is a very common feature.
Right.
And at the same time, you want somehow to have a riding that's just the Hat.
Somewhat, yes.
Okay.
But my concept of what is the Hat is very different from what is on the map.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. Susan?
Thanks for your presentation today. And it's a difficult situation in Medicine Hat because the population isn't there. But the growth is there, but the growth rate is not, you know, to build in the growth, we're going to take up a lot of the rural. And I think the interest today to best serve the needs of this commission and its decision making is how much of the rural beyond the city of Medicine Hat is a good fit, like communities. And I've heard Bow Island mentioned by you. Would that be something you would like to see in the riding? What about Foremost? What about 40 Mile?
So I think that those populations are, they are also beautiful and unique groups of people, but they are also distinctly different from those who are interested in living and working in Medicine Hat.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Evan?
So
thank you for coming forward and bringing this proposal. So I know where 120 is, Township Road 120. I know where 13th Avenue is, and then you would go up 13th Avenue to Highway number 1, and then you would go south or west. Like you would
It's
go
being
towards
like a
Kershaw.
northeast curve on the 41A where you come off of Highway, you would come off of Highway 1, and it kind of winds that highway to take you through downtown. But if you follow 41A to Division Avenue and take it north, that will bring you to the river, and that offers a natural, more distinctive, more well-known road in the city for people to understand where the delineation is.
Okay, so 13th Avenue to Dunmore, following Dunmore down towards the river. Everything west of that would then be, what are you thinking that's going to be? Is that going to be Cypress, Medicine Hat, or is...
Yeah, so 13th Ave to Highway 1 going west to 41A, and then Division Ave to the river. And those, if we choose those as the division, it ends up splitting the city in half. And so in my mind, the city of Medicine Hat has two areas. One of those areas expands a bit beyond the city of Medicine Hat to account for usual activities, I guess, of people who live there. And then everything outside of that, the Brooks, Medicine Hat, southeastern quarter of the province becomes one other big constituency. And I don't think that's the right word.
Yep, that's right.
So what are you thinking
Okay,
happens to the rest?
last question.
Yeah, the rest of what's in Cypress, Medicine Hat right now? What happens to that? It goes just into someplace else?
Its own. So between Brooks and Cypress Medicine Hat, all of that becomes another.
Okay, thank you. That helps me understand.
Ms. Turnbull, thank you very much. It grieves me. It's the first time I've had to cut people off. That's such a full schedule. But thank you for coming, and we welcome you to stay because we're happy to talk after as well. But you're excused. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next presenter, and not only have the best turnout of any community, I think we've got the most honorables as well. So our next presenter is former Speaker of the House, the Honorable Bob Warner.
Mr. Chairman, welcome back. Thank you to each of you for your time and service to our province. My name is Bob Warner. I had the privilege and honor to serve as the Medicine Hat constituency MLA and to also serve as the Speaker of the Alberta Legislature from 2015 until 2019. Prior to that, I served as an executive officer with the City of Medicine Hat. Medicine Hat's name as a constituency goes back more than 142 years. As one of Alberta's original 25 constituencies, including back to the Northwest Territory era in 1883 when the railway arrived, and prior to that, the Blackfoot name of Samus as the Medicine Man's Hat. The 2017 Boundary Commission report, Medicine Hat was the only major city in Alberta to be considered secondary in the naming process. Medicine Hatters cannot find their city's name under the letter M in the alphabetical listing of constituencies. When the name representing the largest portion of the population is diminished, one's sense of recognition and our confidence in fair representation is weakened. The current boundaries do not reflect or respect our municipal boundaries, our communities of interest, our transportation systems, nor our geographical features. Brooks, Tabor, and surrounding counties to us, to our distant west, are very good neighbors, but they are separate regional communities. The north to south artery along number 36 highway might be taken more seriously into consideration in that area. The total population of the city So Medicine Hat and southeastern Alberta, who are we? Total population of the city and region within the boundaries of Cypress and 40 Mile as the western boundaries is approximately 90,000 people. The city population has grown approximately 5% in recent years to about some 68,000 plus people. Population of the counties and communities within those boundaries is a total population of approximately 22,000 people. The population is aging, with one of the highest percentage of 65 plus persons in the province. Therefore, mobility and transportation access to elected officials are important questions. In 2021, according to Stats Canada, less than 13% of Medicine Hat was what was identified as a visible minority, compared to 50% of the much younger Brooks population. Medicine Hat is a major health center for all of southeastern Alberta, including Cypress County and County 40 Mile. To provide air ambulance service in this region, southeastern Alberta has to rely on a charitable donation for its own halo with very marginal provincial contributions. The STAR service cannot serve our region without a refill. The Medicine Hat College is a major regional advanced education center. Main industries and employers in Medicine Hat: petrochemicals, agriculture, energy production of gas and renewables, defense and aerospace, municipal government, healthcare, education, and our community college. Medicine Hat Public Utility exists as a standalone, self-sufficient service that does not rely on provincial utility providers and is exempt from most provincial regulations. The robotics and the drone industry in Medicine Hat has developed and is a significantly emerging industry in southeastern Alberta. Improved representation. If the solution for constituencies was simply population, your job as commission members would be to simply divide Alberta population by 89 seats. We all know that does not represent genuine representation. Within similar regions, we can ensure more genuine representation based on some shared interests amongst adjacent constituencies. The test for new boundaries will need to meet as reasonably as possible each of the principles in the legislation as follows. Communities of interest. The largest concentrated population is Medicine Hat, which has a common interest. Medicine Hat shares commerce, healthcare, cultural events, and regional transportation systems with our very close neighbors, Cypress and County 40 Mile. The shared interests with Brooks and Tabor regions are much, much less. At the center of the Palliser Triangle, we are primarily short grass, dry land, country, ranching, and farming, supplemented by St. Mary's irrigation system. The South Saskatchewan River and the creeks from the counties are our lifeblood. Water kept us here, along with occasional floods and droughts. Communication and transportation. The current boundaries ignore the connection of the northern section of Cypress County along 41 Highway to Medicine Hat. To get to Brooks, you come through Medicine Hat. Communities like Schuler in the north, there is no viable, realistic transportation system from that eastern boundary of Brooks Medicine Hat. The number 3 highway starts in Medicine Hat and has always connected 40 Mile and Bow Island to Medicine Hat. The expansion of number 3 will magnify Medicine Hat as the major crossroads center connecting to the Trans-Canada Highway. The desirability and understandable of clear boundaries. The city of Medicine Hat and the north section of Cypress County were carved up and 40 Mile separated to solve what one must assume was a population problem in the area beyond the Cypress County and 40 Mile western boundary. The erratic notched line dividing Medicine Hat city center remains completely confusing to residents who cannot even determine if and why they are in Brooks Medicine Hat. Boundaries determined by self-identification. Effective democratic representation is much, much more than a financial trading area and ought never to be used as the single reason for effective representation. As we all know, the U.S. has been our major trading partner for some time, but our sense of shared interest in effective representation is very different from our Southern American neighbor. At the Lethbridge hearings, a person cited the Brooks Medicine Hat riding as an example of what created the Southeastern Economic Opportunity Authority as a natural trade area, which means a location where customers live and the distance they travel to another location. I respectfully suggest that his example and illustration was incorrect. The Southeastern Alberta Economic Authority was formed by the communities of the City of Medicine Hat, Cypress County, County 40 Mile, towns of Redcliffe and Bow Island, and the village of Foremost. Brooks is not and was never considered in that trading area. It is therefore recommended that for more meaningful, effective representation, the Medicine Hat City be provided with at least one urban constituency. It is also recognized that the people of Cypress County and 40 Mile sparse population cannot be abandoned on their own. Effective representation does not mean necessarily the exact same location number, but equal in some shared interests. That the Southeast region of Alberta be represented by two constituencies representing a total population of 90,000 people, averaging 45,000, which is within the 25% formula. That one constituency be named Medicine Hat North, the City of Medicine Hat boundaries north of number 1 highway, representing approximately 48,000 people, and Medicine Hat Cypress 40 Mile, including Medicine Hat south of number 1 highway, Cypress County, and 40 Mile County with an estimated population of 42,000 people. I thank you for your time here and urge you to, I'm pleased that we have so many people out here today, and thank you for taking the time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Warner. Your opening about the naming was not lost on the chairman when I reviewed the 2017 report.
It was never lost on me.
I can assure you. And far be it from me to cut off a former speaker. You did go a little over. Very quickly, questions. Mr. Evans, any questions?
No, thank you. That was a very thorough presentation, and thank you for the suggestion and the suggested solution and arming us with the information.
I have the same problem as you identified. I live in Innisfail, Sylvan Lake. Thank you for that point on naming.
Okay, Susan. Dr. Martin, any question?
Just perhaps a footnote on the population numbers that you're using, because obviously we're using the July 2024 numbers, which put, the Brooks Medicine Hat on the one hand and Cypress Medicine Hat, you're right about the naming, but you put them together, it's 109,000. So the numbers that you were using was something in the 90s, right?
Yeah, the 90s would represent 3 population bases, and I estimate
taking out Brooks.
So our boundary.
Rural county, basically.
Pardon me? We were taking out the north boundary of the new proposed constituency for Medicine Hat North would be the city boundary, would be the west boundary of Cypress County. The city itself would be a separate North Medicine Hat, and then the area of Cypress County, which includes Suffield and County 40 Mile and around to the east.
Largely similar to what was before the 2017.
Very, very similar to what was before, but recognizing that Bow Island and 40 Mile do almost
Yeah.
all of their business in Medicine Hat. They don't go to Tabor. And
Mr. Clark?
Yeah, that was actually almost exactly my question is just to be 100% clear, you're talking about grabbing a little portion of County 40 Mile, including
taking the entire county of 40
the
Mile
entire County 40 Mile.
with Cypress County, and they have very similar, I made a point when I was MLA here, in spite of just representing the city. Agriculture in this region, I agree to my previous speaker, we have threads that tie us together. We are uniquely different, but we have common shared interests, and we can't afford, we can't abandon that sparse population in the East. And that's why one urban riding and one urban riding would be I urge you to seriously consider.
Okay. Thank you very much. Great to see you.
Our next speaker, I don't believe is here. Bill Cox? No? Okay, Elizabeth Aiken? Elizabeth Aiken, present? Okay, we may have a bit more time then. Again, the Honorable Dr. David Carter. Speaker after speaker.
We don't stand a chance.
Two is enough. We're a stereo system.
What I failed to mention at the beginning, everything is recorded here, and it will be up on the website in a matter of days. And Hansard is transcribing, and the written version will be. And I have no editorial powers, so be assured everything's on there. Carter.
Duly warned. Thank you. First, I would point out the fact that, yes, I'm David Carter, and you'll find in my comments that I have a bit of a split personality. I preface my remarks by saying, to some people's amazement, I'm a child of Medicine Hat. I came here in 1949, so I have had considerable background experience, and with my father being a clergyman, and the whole outreach of his ministry has been far beyond either of these boundaries, and the same is true of mine. Now, I also point out that by the time your report is tabled, the population of Alberta may well be 5 million. So what part of the background challenge for you all, Your Honor, and esteemed members of the panel, is to what kind of distortion is likely to happen, although you cannot have a crystal ball, as to by the time the next redistribution comes around. And so it is that, again, as split personality, I own property in both constituencies. For example, this morning, I traveled 55 kilometers from where I have property and where we have restored the Anglican Church and Cemetery. It's open to everybody, but including being dead. But 55 miles through 4 different weather systems. 4 different weather systems between Medicine Hat and where I reside on the south side of the hills, where any water there eventually drains through the Milk River, to the Missouri, to the Mississippi, and empties into the Gulf of Mexico. So, a little bit of that, and very quickly, I have the presentation, which I have sent to you previously, but let's go through this because I reflect another aspect of the redistribution, including former member from Calgary. Okay, with respect. My comments are as one who's been an active participant in constituency delineations since the beginning of 1979. I was nominated and elected in March of that year for Calgary-Milliken constituency, which extended from the south bank of the Bow River, including Chinatown, Victoria Park, Stampede Grounds, to Ogden and the southeast limits of the city of Calgary. In 1979, there were significant constituency realignments, in part caused by rapid population growth, which you've noted, and considerable in-migration of residents from other nations, not limited to nor specifically identified, but Vietnam, China, India, and Pakistan, and other jurisdictions. Many of these new Canadians understandably wish to live in close proximity to similar culture identities. In 1982, I was elected in Calgary-Egmont constituency, which is to the southeast of the city core, which included Kingsland, the west side of McLeod Trail, east into Acadia, Fairview, Willow Park, and Maple Ridge, with the extreme east side limited by Deerfoot Trail, and on the south side at Anderson Road. Kingsland was removed and transferred to the riding of Calgary-Elbow, which was curious as Kingsland was an integral portion of the original boundaries of Calgary-Egmont. From '82, I served as deputy chairman of the All-Party Legislative Officers Committee, which supervised the offices of the Assembly, such as Ombudsman, Chief Electoral Officer, Auditor General. This umbrella committee was mandated to report to the Speaker, who in turn was responsible to release the report to all members of the legislature, not just to the government. In each report, there was no provision, nor should there be, to communicate or report to or with the government, the opposition, or any other entity, including the Speaker, prior to the release of said document. In 1986, I was elected in Calgary-Egmont again. I was elected for that term, and at that time, elected as Speaker of the Legislature. In March 1989, I was elected for the fourth time and subsequently elected for the second time as Speaker. I served until September '93. For personal reasons, I chose not to run in that year. I retired to Eagle Butte, southeast of Medicine Hat, and continue to own and occupy this site, which is located in Cypress County. In addition, my wife and I occupy a condo in Medicine Hat within the constituency of Brooks Medicine Hat, where the current MLA is indeed Premier Smith. I am eligible to vote in both constituencies, but in elections since 1993, I cast my ballot in the constituency of Brooks Medicine Hat. Where my wife, who is ill, I just got her out of the hospital. In the condo, we're up on the upper part there. The upper part, yes, we're on the top floor of one of those three large condo units overlooking the city. That particular large condominium complex includes three large blocks. The total population of this site is larger than the combined populations of Hilda, Schuler, and Burdett. So I believe some of the definitions here, I again salute Speaker number 13 for his incredible experience having been with the city of Medicine Hat, who has all those kind of background images which he carefully elucidated. And the fact that
the red light doesn't mean anything.
Oh, well. Well, not necessarily. However, I should like to go on and there's this other comment here. I'm very concerned. Here we are. In 1986, I supervised the renovations and upgrades of electronic capability, handicap and hearing access, fire and evacuation readiness unit from the chamber, including the adjacent areas, specifically the Confederation Room and the rotunda of the building. I noted and understand where the necessary wiring and configuration of the risers and seating positions were apportioned. And Aaron kindly let me know this morning there's a massive renovation supposedly underway. Nevertheless, the addition of these 2 seats gives me great concern. This is going to result in increased crowding, increased. The number of independent members already causes crowding, and how many more want to leave one caucus or another, heaven only knows. This means including potential hindrance in the event of scrambling evacuation from the chamber. In my opinion, these additional seats are ill-advised intrusion by the government and the chamber and should be regarded architecturally as the absolute limit to the number of seats within the chamber. I recommend this be noted in your report. I ask that with due respect. There does need to be in the province full account of the continuing rapid growth and immigration. And on that point, see the profile of Medicine Hat. Go shopping at Superstore after 6 o'clock at night. You will suddenly see a whole difference in the profile, evident profile face-to-face in Medicine Hat. And by goodness, many of them work at Brooks, many of them work in the greenhouses and come from all around the world. And God bless us, our own community, whether it's north or south of the river, are indeed enriched culturally, and a whole surge of, within that group, you have a higher rate of children being born, and watch how they quickly assimilate into this area. So in all of that, I do regard with great concern, and I've listed it in my document, the evacuation of the chamber is a nightmare. If a sudden event happened, we'd never get everybody out. It's that simple. Because in order to exit through the main door, you'd have to then lift out the chair for the sergeant at arms, take away the bar of the chamber, and then some of the people, MLAs, exiting to behind the chair to the right or to the left, they then end up going pushed into this. I know intimately from someone else who worked there. I double-checked yesterday, and there's never been a fire drill. Now, there's been advice to the government members or to the whole building as to if you can somehow get down the main staircase, stumble down that, and then go beyond, you still have another level to go down through steps in order to get out, and there is indeed a marshalling point. The difficulty again is, as I took part of what I took note of in the renovations, let alone the electrical, was to make the place, the chamber and the galleries, wheelchair accessible. Now, if you have any of those things happen, you can imagine the chaos. And again, I'm coming back to this item of overcrowding. No more seats in the legislature, please. It's just I'm sorry, I don't want to use the word. It's a slightly disguised gimmick to try to say we've got enough rural seats to help whichever government power in office, not power, in office, to be able to then try to compensate for that increased amount of population, which in terms of not only Calgary or Edmonton, where it really gives headaches when you're trying to carve these sliver kind of pizza slices to be able to pull in the rural areas to then offset that overcrowding. So you know what it is, it's very difficult for many people to grasp the notion. I remember 5 years ago, a cougar killed my Norwegian elk on behind my house in the Cypress Hills. From then, my family told me no more walking at night in the cemetery or in those hills. And to which my reply was, what self-respecting cougar would want to take down and start to eat someone who's both an ex-MLA and a clergyman.
Dr. Carter, thank you so much, and we actually wish we had more time, I know.
I love the notion of being cut off. It's only my wife that can do that.
Well, I'm in an elite group then, thank you. So please stay there. We're going to start with Mr. Clark, who I'm sure will have a question, and we'll go across the commission, and
Mostly, I just want to say thank you for coming and sharing your perspective with us. And I, now that you mention it, I had remembered some of your past constituencies, and we've just come from Calgary, so a lot of the neighborhoods that you've mentioned are within our consideration of so it's just interesting that the history of both the electoral boundaries. There is nothing new under the sun. It may not be exactly the same, but it certainly rhymes with the previous commission. So I just want to say thank you for coming and providing us with a submission.
Well, thank you. Because the difference between my esteemed colleague, 13, which I regard as a lucky number, is the fact that here he, as speaker, is still the MLA. Whereas in Calgary, and you know I've met before over the years, I was able to hide as one of 16. Now, I still could do all my work, but again, the other 15 members of Calgary, no matter what pockets they were then able to represent certain issues in terms of the writings of the whole city.
Okay. Thank you. Now, I'm going to turn over to Dr. Martin, who's a historian.
Oh, good.
To question you. We may have to have lunch brought in, but Dr. Martin, any questions?
Well, I feel intimidated. The judge on one side and the speaker in front of me. I merely wanted to comment a little bit on the work of building a census. Much confusion about this. It's a fascinating story. I won't bore you with the details, but no census is empirical ever, because people move, they die, they are born, and so on. But the attempt to make a reasonably accurate census occupies the lives and careers of hundreds of demographers, and as I say, it's fascinating, but the 2021 census, the minute the federal government puts out a 10-year census, they start revising the numbers the next week, because it's a great pastiche of estimates. And the long and short is that, yes, we can have estimates that are more current than the date we have chosen. But those estimates are highly volatile because they're subject to the maximum number of revisions. And so we found a more stable number that actually distributes into all of the 87 electoral districts, which is one of the criteria in the Act, that you can use census data if it gives you numbers all across the province. So we felt that the July 1st of 2024 was a stable basis for our work. I think that's all I want to say, but there's nothing nefarious about us not using the bleeding edge number, as it were, but they're the least stable.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Susan? As a fellow historian, I salute you.
Thank you, Dr. Carter, for coming out. I wanted to share with you that for me, this whole trip to date I have learned more than I think I've contributed to date. And I want to thank you for your most informed presentation, which also included, that is so important to me, that element of humor. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Devin?
Which number are you? We have number 9.
Yep. I followed a very great speaker, Gerald I. Morongan. And then I inherited the first most complicated house in Alberta history. And today I still represent 40 of all decisions made the speakers in the province of Alberta. It was a very steep learning curve for the House, and certainly a very steep learning curve for me. And the very first day I was with Bob Warner, you get there and your knees are shaking.
I don't have any questions. Thank you, number 9 and number 15 for your service.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Your Honor, part of my submission is I have my personal photograph of when I was charged with renovating the chamber, the whole chamber, up higher level and down to the rotunda. And some people have said, and it's falsely imputed in some biographical instance, that I lived in the chamber, in the speaker's office. Not true. But I did stay all night, including 3 o'clock in the morning, keeping eye on all the renovations. But this 2 pictures here show what I pointed out about it. The chamber is already overcrowded.
Okay.
And then your wonderful presentation to begin with. And a very key phrase that I noted, effective representation. In the end, after an election, it depends on who the MLA is and how that person functions with respect for all parties, whether they voted for that person or not. But again, thank you for your patience, as well as the patience of the people sitting there. I'm almost afraid to turn around.
Thank you. And far be it from me to be a promoter, but did you bring any copies of your book? Behind barbed wire.
Thank you, my friend. That of the 20 books I've written, that was the one that has sold the most, over 16,000 copies, behind barbed wire, about the prisoner of war camps, not only here, but we're in your constituency of Lethbridge plus Wainwright.
Okay.
I mean, the whole, but thank you, Gil.
Thank you very much. Well, due to a couple of absences, we're still on time, so that's good. Our next presenter is Darlene Dean. Please come forward.
Well, I will be much less intimidating. I'm not quite as important as some of the other people here. Good morning. My name is Darlene D., and I have lived, other than being born in Calgary, lived most of my life here in Medicine Hat. And my husband was born here and raised here. And together we raised 4 sons and have been voting ever since the voting age became 18 and we were able to vote. We've been very active in our community over the years, doing some volunteer work and just enjoying living here in general. We both love our city and are very proud of it. I worked as an elementary school teacher until 12 years ago when I retired. My husband is semi-retired. He owns his own business, but is now sort of doing jobs when he gets called, which is why he's not here today and would have been otherwise. So some of my comments will be reflecting what he feels as well. We became concerned, a little confused in 2017 when the electoral divisions changed, and we found that the area of the city we lived in, we would now be voting in the Brooks Medicine Hat riding. Now, we do understand that the population numbers have determined the boundary divisions, but we could not see such a large portion of our own city having to be paired up with Brooks. That was sort of confusing to us. And I have to admit to you that that year, when we were first voting we were making a financial contribution to our candidate at the time, and we were at the rally, we naively wrote our check out to Cypress Medicine Hat, not even realizing we were not in that riding, we were in Brooks Medicine Hat. And so about a week later, we got a call from our candidate saying, Darlene, do you realize you sent your check to the wrong, and I hadn't realized that. So that all got fixed and switched around, but that's fine. Just to show that my own naivety or ignorance or whatever you want to call it, we were thinking we were voting on the other side. Medicine Hat is a city of 65,000, I believe up to almost 68,000 people now. it's understandable, of course, that we need to be divided in half because of the numbers, the way they've been represented. Brooks is a city of, I think, approximately 15,000, might be a little under that, 1 hour west of Medicine Hat. And I believe the two cities have very distinct and separate concerns and needs. I would like to suggest that it may be unfair disadvantage to have Medicine Hat and Brooks banded together as a voting constituency. We would like to see the city, because of Brooks being far more rural than we are, I consider us an urban center. I hadn't really had a recommendation, nor did my husband, but after listening to Bob this morning, I love your suggestion, Bob's suggestion of the two regions that he was proposing. Both of those then would be urban regions, and we, in the area that we live in, Medicine Hat, would be voting with people like-minded and with similar concerns. And really, that's all I had to say this morning. It was more of a personal thing of not really liking where we're situated as voters.
Thank you very much, Misty. I do want to correct your original comment that you weren't
Yes.
as important.
Well.
The commission members, Misty is probably one of the most talented theater persons and actresses in the city. So don't undersell you.
I just do that for fun, That's not, it doesn't make me important.
Mr. Evans, any questions or comments?
Which constituency or electoral division do you live in?
We're in the Brooks Medicine Hat.
Okay.
And have very little, I think, in common. I'm just going to speak for myself and my husband, very little in common with Brooks. And by the way, we're not happy that we would even have to share an MLA. Not that our MLA lives in either of the two cities, that's a whole other topic. I believe our MLA should be living in one of those districts. It didn't work out that way, but we just feel that we don't have a lot in common voting with Brooks. And yet that's where we're placed, and that's where our vote lies.
Where do you live in Medicine Hat?
Where do I live?
In,
122 Division Avenue.
okay.
Yes. South. 122 Division Avenue South.
What did you think about the, not number 13's presentation and proposal, but I love that we number the speakers. But Ms. Turnbull's presentation in terms of her proposed changing of the boundaries.
Oh, I like that as well. I preferred number 13, only because it made more sense to me. Yes, I like Ms. Turnbull's suggestions. I hadn't thought of that, but yes. So again, it's up to you people to take all of these comments and decide what really would be best. I know you have to do the divisions. They have to be done, of course. Personally, I would love Medicine Hat just to be voting as one big city, but because of our numbers, that cannot happen, and I respect that.
Okay.
But I did think her ideas were really good as well.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for your presentation and coming out today. How do you feel about the South Saskatchewan being a natural, clear boundary between both halves of the city? Because right now there's this sort of triangle piece on the south side. And I was thinking, because I think we can all agree that we can't have a standalone electoral division. So if we have to subdivide it or divide it, could we comfortably use, in your opinion, the river?
That makes sense to me. I do think that, of course, the north end of the river, we'd have to include the north regions.
Yes.
Same with the south.
Yes.
I kind of like that. It is a natural division.
Good. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you.
Dr. Martin?
No, I was just calling for water, actually. But no.
Just in the river made you think.
Oh, that was it.
That's
That was it. Now everyone's going to run to the washroom.
Now that you said that,
Yeah.
So your notion then that you don't have much in common with the people in Brooks probably would extend to the entirety of that county.
Most likely because their county's more rural.
Okay.
And I consider us very urban. Not that we don't have some things in common, but like I think the previous, I forget which speaker then said that they're not shopping in our area. We're quite separate in how we operate. So it just seems strange to me these two cities, or part of our city and their city, were put together.
That's great.
Thank you.
Mr. Clark, can you tell me a little bit about Redcliffe? I see,
About Redcliffe?
I have a tremendous disadvantage not actually being from Medicine Hat. So I look at it on a map, and that's one very narrow, very flat way of looking at things. Have you just any thoughts or comments on sort of Redcliffe?
Well, to me, Redcliffe's very much part of Medicine Hat. I would call it a bedroom community. That's in fact where my husband did own and run his business for many years. I would assume Redcliffe would be included in one of the constituencies. They don't have any major shopping centers there. We are their city. Yeah, they're part of us. Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you again,
Okay,
Ms.
thank
Key.
you.
Much appreciated. And please, we welcome you to stay if you could for the rest of the presentation. So I'll call again Elizabeth Aiken, not present. Mr. Bill Cox, not here. Stan Sakamoto, don't see him either. Break. Marla Roberts. Okay, please come forward. This will be the last presentation before our break.
Good morning.
Morning.
I would like to extend my gratitude to you, the members of the Boundary Commission, for the work you have committed to ensure that the electoral boundaries reflect effective representation to all of the current 87 ridings and possibly going to 89. I grew up in this great city, and I lived here for most of my life. The only time I moved from Medicine Hat was when I went to post-secondary education in Calgary, and I returned shortly after. I received this education because I absolutely loved Medicine Hat and wanted to raise a family here. When in university, I had some unique opportunities, and one of them was I worked with an archaeologist company excavating along the south side of the Trans-Canada Highway just before Irvine. There were numerous teepee rings found there, and I'm kind of dating myself now, and they needed to be excavated before the twinning of the Trans-Canada Highway. This was an opportunity and a job that I remember fondly. After I graduated, my next adventure in life was a laboratory technician at the City of Medicine Hat's wastewater treatment plant. And the later part of my career was president of QP Alberta, representing 36,000 members across Alberta. And I became very familiar with effective representation of these members. I want to go back to my job at the wastewater treatment plant, and since everybody's adding some humor, I would like to add as well. When my son was 2 years old, we camped, and we camped at a lot of dry campgrounds with just outhouses. And my son used to say, "Mommy, where do you work?" And I used to say, "Son, I work at the wastewater treatment plant." And to you, that means when you flush the toilet, I'm actually at the end testing the water to make sure when we discharge to the South Saskatchewan River that the water is good and we take care of the environment. So we're camping and we're out at Reeser Lake, and we go to the outhouse. And my son's 2 years old, and I can see him kind of looking around, and I put him on the toilet, and he's got this puzzled look on his face. And I said to him, what's on your mind? And he said, "My mommy no work down there." So I am married, and I do have one growing son living in Calgary. And I live in the Cypress Medicine Hat riding. And through my experience, the first thing I want to talk about in regards to connections that we have and what is very important in this Cypress Medicine Hat riding is the water. And that is my passion of working with water for many years at the wastewater treatment plant. We depend on water, and we depend on runoff from the actually Cypress Hills from that area, as well as water coming from the Lethbridge area and the Bow River. And that is a huge connection because water is so important for Cypress Medicine Hat and, well, for all of Alberta, but in regards to Cypress Medicine Hat and the agricultural crops we grow, both irrigation and non-irrigation. So one of the reasons I became very interested in the electoral ridings, and it was in 2017. And I don't know where I was before this time in regards to electoral boundaries, electoral ridings, besides probably just living my life and thinking, oh, what does that have to do with me? I learned soon after 2016, 2017, that has a lot to do with me. And it has a lot to do with communities, and it has a lot to do with effective representation all through Alberta, not just Medicine Hat, even though Medicine Hat is a special, unique, wonderful corner on its own. And I can't emphasize how much I love living here, and I'm glad I returned here. As I stated, or as I'm referencing, I wish I would have been more knowledgeable earlier in 2017, because I can tell you when I saw what was happening with the city of Medicine Hat and the split that was done, and I say it's a significant Brooks Medicine Hat split, I would have been at the table making a presentation then. I can't believe I missed this opportunity, but it's okay. I'm here now. It's encouraging, very encouraging, and not surprising to see the population of Alberta growing. With this growth, mainly in urban areas, I can understand why the rural areas are often concerned regarding their effective representation. When I reviewed the submissions back, because I had to do some groundwork, when I reviewed the submissions initially proposed in 2016-17, I noticed a few recommendations of the following proposal. So, and now I'm going back into history, and I do believe history, well, as we know from number 9 and 13, history is very important. So 4 electoral divisions in that time were actually going to be combined into 3 in the northeast area of the province, 5 electoral divisions into 4 in the central area, and 7 into 6 in our eastern corner here. Now, this is my opinion, and just from the readings, and this is only my opinion, that this was done to compensate for the growth of urban areas surpassing that of the rural areas. And as I say, this is my opinion. I also noted that many municipal, provincial, and federal elected officials made submissions recommending that the ridings in the corner of southeastern Alberta remain the same. And when I say remain the same, I mean Medicine Hat as one urban riding, and Cypress Medicine Hat staying this as what they were. Well, actually, that's not true. Cypress Medicine Hat was expanded more. So there were submissions saying that was a lot of territory to cover, and that was in the initial 2007. So these submissions included individuals from Medicine Hat, Cypress Medicine Hat, Brooks Strathmore, and Little Bow. So in the final report of 2017, Cypress Medicine Hat, I'm going to say, and I think it's fair to say, that it was not changed significantly, but that was not the case for the Medicine Hat electoral district. I want to go on to say Medicine Hat is the 6th largest city in Alberta, and by changing the city of Brooks into Brooks Medicine Hat electoral boundary, effective representation of the communities of Brooks and Medicine Hat, I feel, have been diluted. Brooks and Medicine Hat do not share the same community interests. I also want to point out, in respect, that Medicine Hat is the central hub for this wonderful, blended, sunniest city, southeast corner area. And it's not just the city; it's the rural area as well. And between those, what we share, so I'm talking Cypress, Medicine Hat, we share complex infrastructure, diverse economic activity, provide education for this area. Healthcare services are huge. And yes, I just heard somebody say Southwest Saskatchewan. Yes, we have more common with Southwest Saskatchewan. Thank you for that.
You've got great hearing.
Oh, numbers. Thank you, number 9, for helping. Healthcare. No, by all means. I love your sense of humor and very entertaining. I'm trying to step it up, but I'm not going to match it. Healthcare services. We are definitely a central hub for healthcare services, and that is with Redcliffe and the County of Cypress. There's little overlap with the County of Newell and the City of Brooks, and it is important to note that the Brooks Intermunicipal Development Plan is an agreement between Brooks and the County of Newell. Medicine Hat Intermunicipal Development Plan is an agreement between Medicine Hat, the County of Cypress, and Redcliffe. I would also be remiss if I did not address that the standalone urban Medicine Hat electoral boundary is important due to the public ownership of our utilities here. Something that we are very, very proud of, something that has served our community well and will continue to serve our community well, even though there are some discussions regarding that. And I think I'll get involved in that as well. So I think, as all the presenters before me have referenced, the population of Medicine Hat is not large enough to do 2 urban ridings. And I also think with the connections that we have in Cypress, Medicine Hat, that it would do disservice to the communities around us. Our corridor, our transportation corridor, is very, very much the number 3 highway with the county of 40 Mile, Bull Island. So that transportation and communication corridor is very important. And I don't think knowing, talking to people in Medicine Hat, I do know that, and the previous speakers have talked about, they may work, they may live in Cypress County, but they actually consider themselves Hatters. And I'm sure that you're getting to understand from the presentations that we consider ourselves Hatters and the area, Cypress County area. So with the population figures and relative population density that I looked at on the site, the Alberta Boundary Commission site, I see it's like, I also agree that it's going to be over 5 million here shortly. And historically, the split between Medicine Hat, Cypress County, and Redcliffe, I offer that urban-rural split is an effective representation. Am I in agreement with urban-rural splits? I am in agreement with them if they work and if they have the same interests and the same what I went over. If they do not, though, I think that they should not be urban-rural split. And I also think that Medicine Hat down the road, and I'm not presenting this right now, but down the road with the growth in Medicine Hat, and I do realize that it is slower than Calgary, Edmonton, some other communities, Innisfail, all of those communities, I do realize that the growth is much Red Deer, is much it's growing quicker than Medicine Hat, but Medicine Hat will get there, and we will get there. And then I would be recommending 2 urban ridings. But right now, what I am suggesting, because I think you can complain a lot, and you can go out there and you can talk a lot, and you can, but I think you also have to come forward with solutions. And that's one of the things in my careers and all of the careers that I've been in, is that you have to come forward with solutions, and you have to work together to get there, because if you don't get anywhere. So we really need to work together. So historically, as I said, I think that Cypress County, that's including County of 40 Mile as well. And that is not what has happened in the past, but I do think County of 40 Mile and Medicine Hat have very common interests as well. I offer one of the solutions is that we go back to the split that we had previously to 2016, 2017, more like the 2010 split. So that's one of the recommendations that I'm referencing, and that Brooks is then combined with communities that they moor for their effective representation. That being said, I was going to come forward with all these figures and data and everything, and I worked on it for 2 days. And I commend you for having to do this, because I was going to come forward and say, here's what I think. And I thought, first of all, why am I doing this? That's why we have the Boundary Commission. You guys got a lot of work ahead of you. But I was pulling my hair out, and I was gray already. So but I was really pulling my hair out, and I went, you know what? I wish you all the best in these deliberations and what you bring forward, because I really couldn't do it.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ms. Roberts.
So the other recommendation I have is the what number 13 brought forward, which I did not think of. And I do think number 13, using the north of the number 1 highway, and that is the other recommendation. I really do, due to common community interest, I think we do need 1 urban Medicine Hat. And I really strongly believe that we do need that. So I'm asking that you take that into consideration and change Brooks Medicine Hat to a Medicine Hat.
Thank you very much, Ms. Roberts.
You are welcome.
You're obviously done a lot of work and put a lot of thought into this. And talking about pulling our hair out, I'm going to ask Mr. Clark if he has any questions.
I don't stand a chance against any of this. But anyway, no, I'll just say thank you and know that your submission has been heard, and it's certainly something we're actively considering and thinking about, and we'll take all that information. And like you say, the arithmetic is challenging, but this sort of submission and all of your active participation really does help frame the report. So thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Martin.
Thank you for your presentation. And yeah, the numbers are confusing. You know, if we look a little dazed up here, it's because numbers and boundaries are floating past our eyes every day of the week and in our sleep as well. Quite an obsessive kind of sport. I wanted to ask you about 40 Mile. You mentioned it on several occasions. So you can see a comfortable configuration that includes 40 Mile in some respect. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Yeah. So what are you trying to do by that? To bulk up the rural numbers? I mean, what you're trying to? I know you're trying to make enough space for the hat. But it's too big to be easy. So is that the problem that you have?
I'm trying to, yes, in one thought, bulk up the numbers. In my second thought, though, is that they do share a lot of common in regards to people in County of 40 Mile and namely Bow Island. They do share businesses here in Medicine Hat.
Gotcha.
They have businesses. They have common interests connected to Medicine Hat, and I think that was more of a consideration than bulking up the numbers.
Okay.
Yeah, because I originally looked at just the common interest, that transportation corridor, what they share with the County of Cypress as well. So that was more important to me.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Like an earlier speaker today, she lives in the county, Cypress County, and works in the Hat, and she said that it's a very common situation. So it's a permeable boundary, this thing called the Hat.
Yes.
It's not only a geographical boundary, but a psychological one that's quite permeable. You know, we've been to some towns where they just want to lift up the drawbridge and not let the county in. So there's quite a different attitude here, I think, on where people live and how they interact. So, of course, it makes our life more confusing, particularly when the numbers in the next commission may have an easy time finding the solution you want, but we're in some sort of transitional space that isn't quite clean in that way. So I sympathize and empathize with your struggles with the numbers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Ms. Sampson?
Thank you, and thank you for your presentation. I was glad that you talked about the counties of 40 Mile and Newell, because their boundaries are not that apparent on the maps that we're working with, and we now have a county map that we're doing an overlay with. So thank you for that additional information to assist us in our decision making.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Seven?
Just to be clear, you live in which electoral division?
Cypress Medicine Hat.
Okay, and then when you were talking about the intermunicipal agreement plan, you mentioned where Brooks was aligned, and then you mentioned that Medicine Hat was aligned with, it was the County of Cypress and whom else?
Red Cliff.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you again, Ms. Roberts. We have been going now for quite a while. We have a break scheduled, so we're going to take a break now. And I noticed some of the people that were not here when I called are here now. So we'll have a full rest of the morning after. We'll reconvene at 5 to 11. Yes, 5 to 11. Thank you. I should have used you as the example. I shouldn't have picked on my commissioner colleague for pulling their hair out. Okay.
I promise to make it up. I
said to Aaron, I said I should have used Aaron as an example. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to reconvene the commission in a couple of minutes, so please return to your seats. Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm gonna put Justin right down.
4. Okay. Okay, good. I'm glad I didn't read it all then.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's happening now.
Okay, we will reconvene the public hearing, and I noted sometimes when things go wrong, they end up turning out right. So we missed a presenter before the break, but we'll start with that presenter now if he is here. Oh, sorry, Mr. Stan Sakamoto, you're here. We'll start with you. Please come forward. And I indicated at the beginning, everything's recorded and transcribed. Hansard is making a record, and we try to stick to a limit of 7 minutes per presenter. We haven't so far this morning, and we'll have a few minutes for dialogue and questions. So please identify yourself, where you're from, and begin your presentation.
Thank you very much. Hello, my name is Stan Sakamoto. I live in Medicine Hat, and I was born and raised, and create a business here. First of all, thank you for allowing me to speak to the Alberta's Boundaries Commission regarding our new electoral division boundaries in Southeast Alberta. My presentation is going to be brief. It's not going to be 7 minutes. I just want to read some notes that I had written, and I want to thank you for allowing me to express my opinions. Most importantly, Medicine Hat Brooks have separate identities geographically, culturally, economically, and historically. Brooks and Medicine Hat each have distinct college campuses. Both have immigrant populations with separate community concerns, and both should be represented by someone with knowledge and interest specific to their community. The distance between Brooks and Medicine Hat prohibits sharing cultural and trade opportunities. Brooks residents perhaps do a portion of their trade in Medicine Hat, but they are a trade entity unto themselves. Brooks and Medicine Hat are not the same economic area. In the past, Brooks residents may have shopped in Medicine Hat, but their retail base has grown and residents can support local businesses. Both Medicine Hat and Brooks deserve effective representation separate from one another. Representatives must understand the community's specific and different needs. This might not happen currently, but my thoughts are dividing Brooks as a separate entity with the ridings including Ralston, Suffield, Bull Island, and the Bassano area. Medicine Hat should have 2 ridings split by natural boundaries, the South Saskatchewan River or the Seven Persons Creek would split the north and south boundaries in Medicine Hat. The north should include Oyen and Redcliffe. The south should include Seven Persons, Dunmore, Cypress County to the U.S. border. The criteria outlined in the legislation and genuine democratic, accurate, and fair representation must be considered. Natural boundaries and geographic features must also be taken into account. The best interest of our southeastern Alberta population cannot be forgotten. Thank you for listening to my recommendations for the southeastern Alberta boundaries.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sakamoto. Mr. Evans, any questions?
Just a couple of quick ones. So, Mr. Sakamoto, thank you. And my understanding is that there's been a new Chamber of Commerce area created that now is called Southeastern District Chamber of Commerce, which includes Brooks, Medicine Hat, Red Cliff, et cetera. Are you aware of that?
Yes, that's correct.
And how far does that extend beyond Brooks, beyond Bow Island?
It would include the area around Brooks, the Duchess area, Patricia.
Does it go as far as Bazan?
No.
And then my understanding is that with Costco arriving in Medicine Hat, that there's been a significant change in the trade flow into Medicine Hat from that Brooks Bazano area going towards Medicine Hat as opposed to going to Lethbridge or Calgary.
You're probably correct. I also see a lot of people from Saskatchewan coming to our Costco area.
And I think even down into that, well, certainly Foremost and whatnot. Also, can you comment on the draw of healthcare? Is it my understanding that, again, if you're in that Brooks area, you're coming to Medicine Hat for healthcare? I don't know, but certainly Bow Island, I would assume, would likewise, and possibly even into southwest Saskatchewan.
I think for major operations like knee or hip operations, definitely they would come to our hospital in Medicine Hat.
And then you indicated that there were separate campuses, Medicine Hat and Brooks. I think the Brooks campus is a Medicine Hat satellite of the Medicine Hat College.
Yeah, that's correct. But I was just thinking they're separate campuses, then they have their own distinct student bodies.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Ms. Sampson?
Thank you for coming out today. I did read your and your wife's submission, and it brought to my attention that triangle on the south side of the river. And so did I hear you say that you would prefer a more cleaner, concise boundary that is the river as opposed to what we're currently seeing now?
It's divided along the First Street that's included. And I think it should be just a natural boundary as opposed to dividing the districts into streets and.
Right, and you mentioned 7-Person Creek, and I'm afraid I don't see that on my map. But is it in the south side of downtown Medicine Hat?
Yeah, it flows through under the Trans-Canada. Yep.
Okay.
And it flows into the South Saskatchewan River.
Just below the teepee.
Okay, then I can find it. Now I know where to look. Okay.
We stopped and got our picture at the teepee yesterday.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Julia?
Well, thank you, but no questions because Susan took my question, really. I mean, it was precisely about the what is the most effective boundary in the middle of town. So I'm fine. Thank you.
Mr. Clark. Thank you, but no questions. Susan took my question about the triangle as well. So we also read your submission and appreciate it very much.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for, it's always helpful if we have in advance a written submission. I have a question, naming of the constituency.
Oh, yeah.
How do you like it so far?
Well, my proposal or thoughts are Cypress County would be, Medicine Hat Cypress would be south.
Yeah.
And we have to figure out a new one for the North Division.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Sakamoto, and please stay and hear the rest of the presentations. And if you have time, and sometimes we have informal dialogue after. So thank you.
Once again, thank you for doing what you're doing. But I do have a business in Cater to run. So I'm running. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much. Our next presenter is Mr. Jim Black.
Good day, and thank you. Stan mentioned some of the things I was going to bring up about the differences between the two communities. when, in full disclosure, I ran for the Alberta Party in the last election, and when I looked at the new boundaries of the new constituency, Brooks, Medicine Hat, my thoughts went back to my time sitting on the Children's Services Board and on the Health Board, which were sort of coterminous with that new constituency. And when I looked at the responsibilities of an MLA, which are to represent your community and advocate for your community, those are basically the same tenets when I sat on the Children's Services Board and the Health Board. And I can tell you from my experience, it's very hard to do when you're representing a distinct community in Medicine Hat, north and south, and a distinct community in Brooks, north and south. As Stan pointed out, and I'm sure others have pointed out as well, historically and commercially and socially and familially, the trade routes and the movements here are north and south. They're not east and west. And the same thing is true in the Brooks area. And I can tell you that from having coached and refereed sports for years. Teams from Medicine Hat don't go to Brooks. The draw to Medicine Hat is from Oyen, Maple Creek, Bow Island. The draw for Brooks is to Lethbridge, Strathmore, Calgary, and Tabor. So I'll give you a couple of examples, if you'll indulge me, on how difficult I found it to be a representative for the western portion of this constituency versus the eastern portion. I was the principal of the outreach school in Brooks, and some of our clientele were students that were on drug rehab. And there was a proposal that came to the Ulster Health Board to open up a short-term stay room in the Brooks Hospital in a vacant room that the old hospital board had closed. It was right across from the reception, so monitoring would have been easy. And they wanted a place to put students who were starting to show signs of regression, as opposed to sending them to Medicine Hat. That request was turned down by the board. Send them to Medicine Hat. The resources are in Medicine Hat. The funding is in Medicine Hat. So that's one example of how Brooks, in my opinion, was subservient to the needs of Medicine Hat. In the area of even something as simple as representing teachers in Southeast Alberta at the annual Representative Assembly, most resolutions that came from Medicine Hat were put on the floor to be debated. Most resolutions from Brooks were put in a block with other small locals. The rationale was, if it's bigger, it must be more important. So again, you can see where the Brooks area was put aside to the interests of a larger area. But my concerns, and this gentleman here, Mr. Evans, brought up about healthcare. There's three incidences that I can relate to that inform my opinion of how there's an uneven distribution between Brooks and area and here. We had a pediatrician in Brooks, a full-time pediatrician, who wanted in the same room I was describing for the drug healthcare, a small pediatric room where children, newborns who are experiencing a bit of form of jaundice, could take the therapy called the blue light. Again, right across from the reception, easy to monitor. Perhaps they wouldn't need a short-term intravenous. That was turned down, send them to Medicine Hat. As a result of that, the pediatrician left Brooks. They haven't had a full-time pediatrician since then because she believed her interests were not being met. The members of Brooks, families were not being met. Why would you inconvenience them to go to Medicine Hat if you can do the therapy right here in the hospital? Further to that, another plan came to us. I was on the Physicians Advisory Committee, so that's how I know about these things. The doctors in Medicine Hat sent a representative to do basic chemotherapy, like monitoring chemotherapy in their offices, which at that time was, I think, fairly new. I'm not sure how new it was, but it was something they wanted to do. And again, to keep people from moving to Hat, they could do it in their office, look after their patients. That was turned down by the board. Again, monetarily send them to Medicine Hat. We have the services here. As a result of that, a doctor left Brooks because he felt that his needs were being met and he would move to somewhere else. But the most extreme example occurred when we had to find some funding in 2004 because we were not given an increase in funding on the board. So we had to find some, quote the government, some efficiencies. And one of those efficiencies was to cut the acute care beds in Bassano in half. Well, those acute care beds were actually quite vital when you consider the Highway 1 road and the accidents that take place there. And I know it was instrumental on several occasions of providing that golden hour of care to people in accidents, because my brother-in-law was an RCMP officer in Bassano and could testify to the fact that the hospital was actually vital in the treatment and care of these individuals. It's interesting, in the Medicine News this morning, there's a picture of a lineup of people protesting down the Crow's Nest Pass. That's reminding me of what we met when we went to Bassano to explain to them why we were closing some of their acute care beds. It was very emotional, at times somewhat hostile. And again, the theme was, we're being left out, we're being subverted to Medicine Hat. Why are you doing this to us? Why does Medicine Hat always take precedent? We dealt with that. It was quite a meeting, actually. It went on for about 3 hours. So again, it's back to that. When you've created this constituency, I think you've divided it into two different constituents concerns, and as Stan pointed out, that can be problematic in the long term based on my experience. So if someone had asked me in 2017 what I thought would be a better mix for Brooks, I would have said to you, County Newell, Brooks, MD of Taber, and Taber. They're similar in their ag business. They're similar for ag business. They interact naturally, sports-wise, recreationally. The gentleman here asked about the Costco in Medicine Hat. In my experience, it didn't dissuade people from Brooks from going to Lethbridge or Calgary to shop for Costco because they go for other reasons. They don't come here for those other reasons, and they come here strictly to shop, turn around, and go back home. So that's my moment to be a Forrest Gump and tell you that's all I have to say about that. and thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to say about that, because I feel quite strongly that you've divided this part of the country into two different constituencies, and as a backbencher MLA, I'm not sure how you would meet the needs of both constituencies. The Premier might be able to, but I'm not sure how a backbench MLA would do it.
Well, it wasn't us that did it, so I just want to put that on the record.
I realize that.
Tell me, Mr. Brock, where do you live? Do you live in Brooks?
I've lived in this area for 44 years. I lived 23 years in the County of Newell and 21 years here in Medicine Hat. And the reason I came to Medicine,
you know the area well.
Yeah, very well. And I was a representative for teachers and on the health board. I came here for a rather self-centered reasons. I love to play ball, and Medicine Hat has the best senior slow pitch league in all of Western Canada, not just Alberta.
I didn't know that.
And gold medalists out of Utah, as I understand.
A couple times, yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm the only one from the western side of the constituency that's ever come here. The rest, when they retire, they go to Strathmore, Calgary, or Lethbridge. And so that's my motivation. I mean, to play pickleball.
Okay.
I know. No, we don't like senior slow pitch guys playing pickleball because they hurt themselves.
Okay, Mr. Evans, any questions or comments unrelated to sports?
Yeah.
Scott, thank you for the amount of information and, firsthand information you're able to give to us. The Palliser, there was a lot about the Palliser Health region, and that extends out to how far?
Well, in those days, we went from Oyen over to Bassano and then down to Bow Island. That was the area we covered. It was someone said it was the size of Switzerland, the area that we covered.
Without the beauty.
Yeah. Well, there is beauty. Red River Valley is kind of pretty. And
if I understood it seemed like everything was as usual, as is most often the case with health divisions. They tend to gravitate or throw everything into the biggest center, and that's what was happening. And so, did I understand that you're looking at, you're saying Brooks is going to be better represented away from Medicine Hat than it currently is?
That's my belief, based on my experience.
Okay. I just want to make sure I understood that. Thank you very much.
Okay, Ms. Sampson?
Thank you for your presentation.
Sylvan Lake, right?
Yes, Sylvan Lake. Well, it's Innisfail, Sylvan Lake.
Right.
I'm struggling with that.
I taught Spruce View for 7 years.
Ah, yes,
This
that's
is Sylvan Lake quite
that
often.
part. Yeah, thank you.
It's grown a lot.
It has. We're 17,000 too, same as Brooks.
Whoa.
Yeah. But my question is, with Brooks not being Brooks Medicine Hat, we had a previous presenter who talked about a north-south alignment as opposed to
East-west.
yeah. And so Brooks, instead of going like it previously was to Chestermere, Strathmore area, would it be a better alignment going as far down as the Tabor-Warner, picking in Tabor?
I believe it would. I mean, it'd be a north-south like Carson or Carson Sitka. But in my experience, like again as a coach and a referee, everything tends to go north-south in that area. Like
Right.
for minor ball, it's always Tabor, Vauxhall, Lethbridge. It's not Medicine Hat.
Yeah.
And unless you play on a varsity volleyball or basketball team or the rangeland football team, you don't come to Medicine Hat. You go to Strathmore, Hannah, you go that way. So the north-south boundary or avenue would be more in line with what already happens anyway.
Right.
The Mormon and Mennonite communities from the county of Newell go south and then they go west. That's a major draw because in sports, for example, the Mormon community tends to go Tabor, Vauxhall, Lethbridge, Carson. And if you referee those sports, that's the way you tend to go as well.
Okay.
So I think it's a more natural fit than the east-west that we have now,
Right. Okay.
in my opinion.
Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Martin?
I don't have anything to say other than I am quite taken with your description of the north-south orientation of a lot of activities, but there just isn't the population in that kind of package. I can't think that there would be the population. So you have just made our problem worse.
Well, may I respond?
Yeah.
Well, by my count, it would be, if you put County Newell, Brooks, MD of Tabor, and Tabor, I think there's somewhere in the range of 38,000 people, which is 25% of your mandate, which is so. And the other point I would like to make is that agribusiness is pushing up against the energy business for revenue. In fact, I think 2018 it was about 400 million more than energy. But that's only going to grow. And if you expand Highway 3 to a 4-lane highway, it's going to go even more. If you look at that Highway 3 corridor, the amount of agribusiness that's been developed down there in the last just 7 years, it's huge. Mm-hmm. And so those areas are tied agriculturally. And I think there's only potential for growth down there. I don't think that's going to be a rural constituency that's going to shrink, in my opinion.
Okay, thank you.
Clark? That's, I'll build on what Dr. Martin had said. I think that the idea of a north-south alignment, I think just in kind of concept, I can understand that flow. And that's exactly the sort of information we're interested in, is sort of who goes with who, you know, where does that all land? Arithmetically, and the math probably doesn't work, unfortunately, in terms of, because we're working to a 55,000 average, 54,929. So it's around 41,000 is our bottom limit.
Oh, yeah. So
we need to be mindful of that. And also, we're not trying to necessarily, we're trying to avoid the absolute edges also. And it's, as Justice Miller said in the intro, it's not just a math exercise either. We're thinking about effective representation and making sure that various parts of the province are adequately represented. So it isn't, we can't just pop this into an AI algorithm and say, give me a bunch of places that add out to the mean exactly in the middle. So with all that kind of context, if we needed a piece of Medicine Hat, or I guess the question is, if we didn't make any changes, because the two constituencies are already pretty much exactly at that 54,929 average, give or take. They're pretty darn close, among the closest in the province, actually. I guess two kind of questions. If it didn't change at all, would you be okay with that, perhaps with a slight tweak around the triangle south of the river? Or is there another recommendation that you would have? If we can't do your specific recommendation, would you be happier with it the way it is? Or would you make another suggestion in terms of how you might put it together?
Well, your second question first. If you're asking me my opinion, I'd say go back to the way it was before you made the changes. And then the other part of the question is, Medicine Hat has always had two votes in the legislature. When they were Medicine Hat Cypress, Medicine Hat, they had two votes. When you now split them Medicine Hat Cypress, Medicine Hat Brooks, they still have two votes. So if there's an issue in conflict between Brooks and Medicine Hat wins out all the time because they have the majority vote. And so that's again part of my thinking about how I believe it would be a better fit to go north-south through Tabor and perhaps down into Warner. I'm not sure how you would work that out. As his honor said, that's your job this time, not somebody else's to deal with. So I leave that to you. But that's my opinion based on my experience. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to it, and good luck to you.
There's a reason commissions aren't reappointed.
I mean, everybody says good luck to us. We're getting increasingly nervous.
Mr. Black, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Your presentation is very winsome. Thank you.
Thanks.
Our next presenter is Gilles Bloet.
I'm maybe going to read a little bit from my notes.
Did I pronounce your name correctly?
You did remarkably well.
Thank you.
Yes. I also go by Gil if that's easier for
Okay. We're in Alberta now. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it depends what part. I'm actually a fairly new resident of Medicine Hat. I've been here over 3 years. I grew up in a little hamlet just outside or just south of the town of Peace River, and was raised on the grain farm, and we farmed as much as 9 sections, which is quite a bit at the time. I graduated from Fairview College with a diploma in agricultural management and livestock. During that time, I purchased my father's grain farm, but I yearned to see more of the world, and that took me to different parts of Alberta, central or southern BC, where throughout those times I gained the journeyman partsman ticket, worked in farm machinery as well as construction equipment. So over the years, I've worked in different areas where there was, in some places, grain farming, mixed farming, industrial equipment, construction equipment, as well as materials handling, like forklifts, which gave me a real idea of the pulse of the commerce and industry in each of those areas. And I draw on that experience to speak to you today. And then I did a career change and went back and got a Bachelor of Social Work and worked in child protection and guardianship for 20 years. And again, I was keenly interested in service delivery and how communities organize and how it functions. I also want to mention I have 2 adult children living in Medicine Hat. So while I was living in other areas, I was coming here a couple times a year at least for 20 or 30 years. And now I've moved full-time here to be near my children. So in having been here for a while and having traveled the highways, Highway 1 and Highway 3 numerous times, I kind of see the South Medicine Hat in the southeast corner of the province as an island in the middle of a sea. And I use the sea analogy to describe the surrounding area because seas are somewhat amorphous. You look at them on the map and you don't know where the sea starts, that sea ends, or whether it's part of an ocean or how that works. But I believe this area is a bit like that. the island, obviously, to me, is the city of Medicine Hat, and including the commercial and industrial areas on the northwest edge leading into the Red Cliff commercial area. There's really no there is a boundary, but there is no boundary. It's kind of one area. And of course, Red Cliff itself, as somebody else mentioned, it's one community with Medicine Hat in many ways. The sea around Medicine Hat, I would see as Cypress County, 40 Mile, including Bow Island. So, and notice I don't include Brooks in that area. To me, it doesn't take long living in the area or driving down the highway to see that there is sort of a boundary just past Suffield. There's not much there for a while, and then it goes up to Brooks. And for me, I see different types of agriculture on either side of that. And I see, frankly, the same thing going west on Highway 3, that once past Bow Island, there is sort of a little boundary there, and then you get into the agri-industrial complex that's near Tabor. And I would comment that, and this is just me observing it, not having lived here for a long time, but I see Brooks having, in terms of its agriculture, having more in common with Tabor and that area going towards Lethbridge. One of the aspects of that is that Medicine Hat doesn't have a lot of irrigated land relative to those other areas, and so the agriculture is obviously different. And if you go south from here, the southwest corner, you see a lot more dryland farming and ranching. So it is a slightly different version of agriculture from what I can tell. Now, so I'll just end up with a couple things that don't make sense to me, if I could. And one of those is about having Brooks and Medicine Hat in the same riding. I believe it was a creative way of making ridings fit, making the population more or less a uniform size. But I think in doing so, it really disregarded natural connections between the communities that exist. And in some ways, other speakers have talked about how there's a disadvantage. The current situation is a bit of a disadvantage for the citizens of Medicine Hat. And I say that because I've lived in Crescent Heights for a couple of years, and I drive by the MLA's office almost daily, and I hardly see it open. And I looked into it. The reason for that is that this is a satellite office of the Brooks constituency office. So I can count on one hand the number of times I've seen that office actually open. And I just I point that out not to slam the MLA, but to say that I think that's a function of the structure of the writing. It is more useful in some ways for the MLA perhaps to have their office in Brooks than it is in Medicine Hat. I'm a proponent of not having this particular organization in terms of Brooks Medicine Hat, as you can probably tell. So I would favor a mostly Medicine Hat riding with another one of Medicine Hat combined with surrounding areas. I'm aware that you'd have to split Medicine Hat in some way. And I would see one of those ridings, probably the southern part, or however you divide Medicine Hat, to include Cypress County, 40 Mile, and Bow Island. This is another thing that doesn't make sense to me. I see the existing two constituencies in Medicine Hat, and that the boundary between them is quite arbitrary. I've lived on the South Hill, which is close to downtown, and that area is split in two by this boundary. which does not make any sense to me. So I don't, I think that needs to change. I would favor a more natural boundary such as the South Saskatchewan River or the Trans-Canada Highway or some other configuration. And that's it.
Well, thank you very much, sir. Much appreciated. Mr. Clark?
Yeah, thank you very much. Thinking about your suggestion to carve out Brooks from the Brooks Medicine Hat constituency and recognizing it may not be feasible to connect with Tabor. It just, again, based on the comments we made with the previous presenter, is there more of a connection? Would it make sense to go north and west towards Strathmore? And that was the way it was before. Is that a kind of a common direction as well for the folks at Brooks?
I couldn't really comment on that. I'm not that knowledgeable of Brooks. It would appear to me that way, but that's just not without any real knowledge on the subject.
Again, good luck. We need to make those decisions ourselves. That's what I'm reading between the lines. So, my word's not yours, but anyway, thank you for that.
Mr. Martin?
Thank you. I'm really quite taken with your gift for poetry, and I wonder how that came to you, having spent so much time as a grain farmer. Maybe there's time left over to think in poetic ways.
You sit on the tractor for many hours. You have to do something.
But it's a very striking metaphor. Medicine Hat is the island surrounded by a sea of grass. I love it. Mm-hmm. But it reminds me that everyone I hope everybody in Medicine Hat has read Wolf Willow by Wallace Stegner. It's the most poetical description of this whole region of the Cypress Hills over time. And I know this is being read into Hansard, and so it should.
Homework.
Yeah. Susan?
You know, thank you for your presentation, but you've just really messed it up. What are we gonna do with Brooks? Really? I don't know what to ask because I don't see a clear solution. So we're gonna take in the information and we're gonna figure it out. Thank you.
If I could comment, I think you're being put in a very difficult position by only adding 2 seats in the province.
Yes, I hear you. Yes.
And I think that's part of the problem. And there's maybe nothing the commission can do about that, but I would suggest that, as somebody else mentioned, I'm still in contact with a lot of people in Peace River, and those writings are unmanageable inside, right? So and I read an article that, the population has doubled in Alberta in 20-some years, but there's only 4 more seats or something to that effect. So I would suggest or offer that maybe the commission should speak on that matter. If they're not able to add more seats, they perhaps could describe the situation and whether it's amenable or not, and maybe towards the future.
If we do that, we can't let Dr. Carter read our report.
We have to keep it secret for number 9.
Mr. Evans?
I wanted to echo the same thing that Justice Miller said, that we have to keep any additions secret from number 9 because he's not having it. Thank you for your helpful submissions. I think you made the problem easier to solve. We're just going to make Brooks an island.
More islands is good.
That's right. Yeah. Thank you very much, sir. Please stay for the rest if you can. Griffin Bray.
I would like to wish a good morning, approaching afternoon to the Commission. I feel a bit out of place here, both age and prestige-wise, but I hope that gives me a unique perspective. Yes. I hope to come at this from a perspective of the youth and young adults of Medicine Hat, which there is a very vibrant community within which I've been very privileged to work with quite closely. Although some youth centers have been closing down and such, but that's a different concern, not for the board. I personally feel that Medicine Hat needs better representation apart from Brooks, particularly with Redcliffe as well. Well, it's been brought up, Medicine Hat and Brooks have very different concerns, urban and rural respectively, and many different populations. Medicine Hat has, as I said, a very unique population as far as the amount of seniors we have, the youth community, as well as many different minority groups, both ethnic, religious, and sexual and gender. Particularly the last two within which I have a lot of friends and within which I identify personally. So the representation there I feel is very important. As far as the population goes, I think that it should be split into two urban ridings, Medicine Hat Cypress, and if you need a name for the north one, Medicine Hat Redcliffe, I think has quite a nice ring to it personally. But yes, I think Brooks has a lot of unique concerns that they need their own MLA for, and I think it's really difficult for the MLA to have to balance between North Medicine Hat and Brooks, especially because, you know, we have a satellite office here and such. So I think, I'm just going to keep it short here, I think it would be very good for both of us to have a riding for Brooks and then, you know, Medicine Hat as two urban ridings instead.
Thank you, Mr. Bray. And so to encapsulate your presentation, it was a trial marriage, but we should split up. Is that what you're saying?
Well, putting it that way, sure.
Okay. Mr. Clark?
I won't comment at all on Mr. Evans' vocation as it relates to that sort of thing.
I will solve that problem.
So yeah, first off, I just want to say a huge thank you for you coming out. You know, what's been so gratifying about this whole process, I think for all of us, certainly speaking for myself, I think this is the most pure form of democracy I've ever been involved in. And, you know, this is by far and away the most engaged crowd, I think, as Justice Miller's noted. And what's so satisfying is to see such a wide range of different perspectives and people and citizens, and really reflecting, I think, the breadth of what Medicine Hat and region is all about. So I just want to say mostly thank you for that. I also, thanks for the suggestion, if we do end up with some sort of the Redcliffe Medicine Hat connection, I think is really, really helpful. Maybe I guess I would just ask you to think about it like this. I mean, part of the feedback that we've received around, I'm just trying to think of maybe what I'm trying to come up with is a thought experiment to kind of go the opposite way, right? Can you tell me why the two constituencies as they are, where Medicine Hat is roughly split in half, and combined with its rural, and, you know, Brooks is obviously its own sort of unique, you know, urban area as well. Why or why not are there benefits or challenges in splitting it up that way? You know, does it actually create a need to kind of cross boundaries that exist, both, you know, actual municipal boundaries, but also, you know, cultural, lifestyle, rural, urban? Is there a benefit in that of bringing that kind of different perspective together in one area, or?
Yeah, I would think so. Particularly for Medicine Hat, because I live in Crescent Heights, always have for the past 22 years or so. I think I remember my own age, but yeah, so Brooks is very separate. I feel in Medicine Hat, especially because of Suffield, we have a very unique position. Even on the global stage, when I've been to Southern California, even there, they go, oh yeah, Medicine Hat, we've heard of that because of the Tigers and such. Or if I talk to some friends in Great Britain, they tell me, oh yeah, we've been to Medicine Hat because of Suffield. So trying to engage us with Brooks, it seems a bit troublesome when we're kind of very clearly our own community. So personally, I feel like the boundaries, if you were to split them, on the south side should stretch to 40 mile, and some parts of Boat Island, or maybe even all of it. And as far as the north side, I think Redcliffe should be represented properly, as well as Suffield. And as far as, you know, the different cultures and such, I find it's very difficult to try and campaign for the MLA that I feel like represents my and my friends' interests the most, as well as the interests of the different communities in which I partake. And doing all the campaign that I can, only for the vote to be incredibly influenced by Brooks and the rural community, which need just as much representation. I'm not trying to say that they don't matter as much, obviously. But quite simply, they're not accessible to people my age, people around me, and such. And well, a lot of my communities simply don't exist there, especially, say, the Métis community, which is very urban within Medicine Hat. So yeah, I feel like the different cultures are very different within the city and then surrounding.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Martin?
No questions. Thank you.
Ms. Sampson?
Thank you for coming out today. And I don't have a question, but I just wanted to share with you, I think it's really important that people of your age come out to things like this. Like, we just struggle in all aspects of democracy to engage your demographic, your age group. And so for me, it's been really refreshing to see you here. And you might, I don't know if everybody would concur, I think you're the youngest person that has addressed us in the 3 weeks that we've been on the road. That's how monumental this is for me. So thank you very much for coming.
Well, if you'll allow me, a lot of people my age feel very disenfranchised with politics. We feel like we have next to no control over what happens, no representation really, and I feel like trying to split the boundaries properly into more urban ridings, because youth are primarily in the urban areas from what I've noticed. Even if they're rural, they will come here for culture because, well, you don't got much culture with cows and such, I assume.
You're right.
Obviously, I don't have much connection to the rural community, so correct me if I'm wrong on that. But for the most part, you know, youth just naturally connect to the urban communities. So splitting that into urban ridings would help us feel more represented and perhaps allow more people my age to come into politics.
Great. Great answer. Thank you.
Mr. Evans, any comments or questions?
No questions. Thank you.
Mr. Bray, thank you so much for coming out, and I echo my colleague's comment. I should indicate that electoral boundary commissions are terrible at prognostication, as I've looked through the historic one. Just as an example, the 2002 Electoral Boundaries Commission predicted that Alberta may very well have a population of 4 million people by 2030. You can believe it. And as we go through, and this is no criticism of the previous, because we know years from now, we're going to be severely criticized for our work, I'm sure. But we are lousy predictors. But your comments are helpful, and your perspective is very interesting. So thank you so much. And thank you for sitting throughout the whole proceeding. And please, I'll excuse you to the gallery, but please stay.
Sure thing.
If you can.
And if nothing else, I just really like the name Medicine Hat Red Cliff for the riding.
Yeah.
Me personally, I feel like it makes it less confusing.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, our next presenter is Jim Horsman. I actually introduced previous members as the Honorable, and I misspoke. Sorry, the Honorable Jim Horsman.
Well, thank you. I'm here very simply to endorse the proposal advanced earlier on by Bob Warner. I thought that his presentation was thoroughly it went through it very carefully and made these proposals. And so I must tell you then, when he gave me his submission, I said this is going to be very hard for me to support a submission by an NDPer. But I do, because I recognize his experience both in municipal governance and in the Legislative Assembly process as well. And I thought it was an extremely useful presentation, and I'm here as a supporter of that proposal rather than to advance anything on my own initiation. I do want to say, though, however, a little bit about the history, my history. I ran on 7 occasions. The first 2 under the, from 1935 to on social credit regime, and lost handily on both first occasions. And then when I finally won in 1975, I won by 130 votes. And at that time, it was Medicine Hat Redcliffe. And interestingly enough, of my slight majority, most of it was achieved by having had Redcliffe support strongly for me. And so when they decided to move Redcliffe out, I was disappointed. But I then won anyway after that. So that's really what I'm here to do, rather than to advance anything new on my initiation. And to say that I thought that Bob Warner's presentation was so thoroughly and carefully developed that would be my presentation to you today.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Horsman. Your bipartisan spirit has been a hallmark of your career throughout. So I acknowledge your endorsement of Mr. Warner's presentation today. And as I have to say, part of this job I've had to look through answered. When you and Pam Barrett dialogued at committee stages, your bipartisan spirit shone through then, and you know the task that's before us. So thank you for your eminent fairness. Questions? I'm going to ask Mr. Evans to start. If you have any questions or comments that relate to Mr. Warner's presentation and to what Mr. Horsman said.
No, your willingness to be bipartisan and to support a good idea, regardless of it coming from number 13, is a great example for this committee and this commission, and that's what we're striving to do as well, is to put partisan politics aside, to come up with a solution, the best solution we can come up with, and hopefully to have it a unanimous one. So thank you for your example and your service.
I could just add a little something to that, if you will, about what takes place during the Legislative Assembly itself. I was the government house leader. Pam Barrett was the leader of the NDP party in the legislature. And the Liberal, oh my goodness, I am getting old, represented, we met every Monday morning, along with the representative from the Speaker's office, to determine what the agenda of the Legislative Assembly would be for that forthcoming week. And I must say that Pam Barrett and I had a great deal of difference philosophically and so on. But when it came to trying to advance the legislative session and do it in a civilized manner, we worked together very carefully. And I think that was an example, I might add, to that they might like to reignite during the course of their present legislative assembly, but that's not something you're here to hear for. or here to direct.
Ms. Sampson, questions or comments?
Just a comment. Thank you so much for coming out. It's really made the morning enjoyable, the diverse dialogue we've been having, and you've been part of it. You're in the record forever again. Thank you.
Dr. Martin?
Again, thank you very much. I don't have much to add other than I am glad that that you're such a strong medicine hat advocate. You know our problems with the numbers and shuffling things around the board may be possible, may not be possible. It may get left over to the next commission, some of it, but we're in a game of incremental alterations. If we are to change things into two ridings that have just about the perfect numbers and don't show significant short-term growth. I ask at every meeting, so everyone can talk about development and everything is going to grow because, well, developers talk like that. But I'm more interested in what I call the TIVEC test. Is it really being built? Is it imminent and tangible? Has it got a permit? And I don't think there is significant new residential growth in either of these ridings. Would that be a fair characterization?
Well, I think perhaps my colleague who served in the municipal government for many years in a senior position would be better able to answer that than I could. There is growth throughout all of Alberta, but it's not uniform, obviously. But those people who've had the experience at the municipal level should be consulted in terms of what they may expect to see in terms of their needs, in terms of what government relationship there should be between the provincial government and municipal government. So I think that's something that Bob would be better able to answer than I could.
Thank you.
Thank you. Again, more work for us to dig into to try to understand. And as a famous Albertan, adopted Albertan, I guess, used to say, we'll have to try to skate to where the puck is going to be, as well as a big part of our challenge. I don't have a question as much as a comment. We were talking last night at dinner with your friend Troy Wason, whose name is now officially in Hansard. Again. Part of this process is just putting people's names in Hansard. But we were talking last night, and I just want to echo my colleague Mr. Evans and the others' comments here on kind of nonpartisanship and how we're, as I've said before today once already, I feel like this is, having done some things in the public sphere before, the purest form of democracy I've ever participated in. And I think your lessons in how to work in an inherently partisan environment, but in a respectful way of listening to and understanding what other perspectives are, is a wonderful frame of reference for us on this commission, and in whatever tiny way we can have an influence on the rest of our political or democratic discourse. Hopefully we perhaps can achieve that as well. So mostly just a note of thanks for you being here today and for your service to the province. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I hope that it's been of use. There's one, I look back on the history of Alberta from 1935 until 1965, there was no question that these issues were determined by some committee of the Social Credit Party, which governed throughout that entire, and I have no idea how but then along came this guy by the name of Peter Lougheed in 1965, and he skewed the whole mess as far as they were concerned. But nonetheless, I think that you have a role to play, and a significant one. And that is to make sure that there's some equity in terms of the representation. And population is a key element in that. And you have to take that under consideration, as well as what other representation may be made to you regarding the future as far as economic development in different parts of the region and so on. And these are all things that are obviously have to be addressed not just by the province, but by the municipal governments, who are going to be affected significantly by what economic and other aspects of the changing life of Alberta may be. And I just hope that we don't have to go through this when we're the 51st state.
Mr. Horsman, thank you so much. You have implicitly taught civics to a couple of generations through your life and your profession, and you just gave us a little lesson again today. I'm going to excuse you to the gallery. If you can stay, I know the commissioners would love to chat with you privately after.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
And I'm using this cane because I'm the author of my own misfortune and the way I pulled weeds in my garden last night.
It is 5 to 12. Our last scheduled presenter is the Honorable Rob Renner. No pressure, Mr. Renner. We have not used the time limit so far, so I don't propose to start.
Except on commissioners.
Actually, we may have had one add-on as well. You're the last scheduled presenter, Mr. Renner.
The cleanup hitter and send you on your way. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Rob Renner. I served as the MLA for Medicine Hat from 1993 until 2012. And between Mr. Horsman, who was my immediate predecessor, and myself, we have about 39 years of consecutive MLA representation at your table today. I want to also indicate that I've been in discussion and had some long conversations with Bob Warner as well, and I was here this morning when he made his presentation, and to a very large degree I agree with everything that he had to say as well. I want to talk just a little bit about your role as the Electoral Commission. I don't envy you. It's like playing dominoes. When one moves, then 5 more down the line are going to move along with it, and it must be a very, very difficult job to be given. And others have mentioned the fact that the growth of seats doesn't necessarily equate to the growth of population, and so the faster growing areas cause trials and tribulations in the slower growing areas. But I also want to talk about representation and adequate representation, and how an MLA can represent their community, and that's really the whole basis for democracy. We concentrate so much on the legislature, and I get so many votes, and you have to make sure the votes are equal. But the lion's share of the work of an MLA is not done in the legislature in Edmonton. It's done in their constituency office and in the association and the work that they do when they're back home, which is the majority of the time. Contrary to popular belief, they're not on holidays when they are in Edmonton. They are hard at work in their own constituency. And that's the reason why you need to make sure that MLA has a community that has some commonality, that they can have a clear understanding on what are the issues, who needs in particular assistance. In my own case, Mr. Forsman concluded his political career in 1993. I was elected in 1993, and it just happened to be that I was elected into a new riding under a previous electoral boundary commission that was not the same as the one that he represented. That particular boundary commission determined that Medicine Hat, although it had always had one MLA, it had grown too large to have one MLA. And in their wisdom, rather than splitting the city in half, they put about 3/4 of the city into one riding. They called it Medicine Hat. Then they put about 1/4 of the city into another riding, called it Cypress Medicine Hat. And that's the breakdown that I operated under for the majority of the time that I was the MLA. That included Cypress County, and it also included the county of 40 Mile, town of Bow Island, town of Red Cliff. And I think that it worked and it served the needs of the constituents very well. My riding was 100% urban riding. I dealt with not only the people that lived within my own riding, but I tended to, and my office tended to deal with issues that were Medicine Hat issues at the constituency level. When people were having problems getting their WCB looked after, when they were doing any number of things that they call on their MLA to do, I worked with my colleague Lauren Taylor, and then later Mr. Mitzel, and we tended to say, I'd call Lauren, I'd say, Lauren, I've got an issue. Someone owns some land in your constituency, and they've called my office because they live in my constituency. But is there something you can help me out with? Because this is an area of expertise that I don't really have. Conversely, Lauren would call on me, and he would say, "Can I send somebody down to your office because they're dealing with issues that I know you deal with on a day-to-day basis, because we've got people that we call them our steady customers. They were in the constituency office frequently." And we got to know the system. We got to know the people in the department that we were dealing with and how we can resolve their problems as quickly as possible. And we worked as two people serving a very large constituency. He had, in both cases, it was their constituency geographically was far larger than mine, but the concentration of work was in the city of Medicine Hat. The work that's on the ground, not the work in the legislature. Once we were in the legislature, of course, we were MLAs just like everyone else, and we were representing and voting on behalf of the people that we represented. But it is so critical that we consider not only population, but also the quality of representation and whether someone can actually do the job. We have some geographic realities that we have to deal with southeastern Alberta. You see on the map there the Bow River. South of the Bow River is the Old Man River. The Old Man River comes through Lethbridge. The Bow River comes through Calgary, and that tends to be where you go upstream, and that's the closer you get to Lethbridge and the closer you get to Calgary, that's kind of where the migration ends. And it also, we've heard earlier about north-south. The north-south only works where there's bridges. If there's no bridge, that's a very hard barrier, those rivers. And then just north, we also have the Red Deer River. And so we have all those rivers, and we also have one that you don't see on that map. It's called CFB Suffield, and it's this huge area that goes all the way across the north. Nobody lives there. And it's not hard to represent, but it sure is hard to get around. They don't like it if you take a shortcut. And so you see Hilda and Schuler and those places, they can't get to Brooks, for example, because they probably get shot along the way, especially when the British were there. So I think there are a lot of arguments that are very valid that say it was a mistake to take 40 Mile, Bow Island out of that Cypress Medicine Hat riding and substitute Brooks. I can understand why it was done. The numbers would justify it. But it makes for a very, very difficult riding to represent, and I don't know that I would want to be the MLA that has half of Medicine Hat, all of Brooks, all of Redcliffe, all of these municipalities, municipal councils that expect your time and energy, and still do the on the ground work that an MLA is expected to do. And so I would suggest that that even though it may end up being slightly lower than the population base that you're aiming for, in this particular case, there are some local issues, some realities geographically and otherwise that it probably justifies having a slightly below average and have Brooks return back into that area closer to Calgary, Strathmore, Chestermere, and those areas. They truly do have much more in common than they do here in Medicine Hat. So that's it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Renner. Mr. Clark, questions?
I think. Can you just tell me a little bit more? I'm one of our remits is effective representation, right? And that's there are some framework parameters, I guess, that are laid out for us both in the Act and flowing back up to the Supreme Court reference of 1991 that sort of define common communities of interest, geographies, scarcity, density, et cetera, and Justice took us through that at the beginning of the day. I'm just curious if you can maybe flesh out a little bit more in ways that might help us both here in Medicine Hat and area and elsewhere in the province to define what is a common. So you gave some examples of the MLA constituency work, and that was really helpful. I just wonder if are there even more kind of essential principles that we could use when we're evaluating these sorts of questions here, but elsewhere as well.
No, I think one of the examples in this particular part of the world is irrigation district. We talk about municipal councils, we talk about rural municipalities, we talk about a number of things, but there's another whole group that is governance and critical to the needs of southeastern Alberta, and that's the irrigation councils. Brooks is in the Bow River Irrigation Council. Bow Island and 40 Mile all the way up to Tabor is the St. Mary's Irrigation Council. Their communities tend to associate up and down the canal system, just like you and I, who are not irrigation farmers, will be up and down the highway system. It's critical that irrigation farmers have some commonality, and hopefully their MLA is familiar with and can work with their respective irrigation councils as well. So there's another little extra something in southern Alberta that you don't find in the rest of the province, but irrigation is the lifeblood of southern Alberta, and Medicine Hat is right at the very end of the St. Mary's irrigation system, and the canals end in Medicine Hat, but all the way up that canal system, they're all working together and all interrelated. And so that's why it makes so much more sense to include Bow Island and 40 Mile in one of the associations associated with Medicine Hat.
That's very, very helpful. Thank you.
Dr. Martin?
No questions. Thank you.
Susan?
Thanks for coming out, but I don't have any questions.
Thank you. Kevin?
No questions for me either, but thank you for your helpful submissions and the input. It's very helpful.
Thank you much. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Renner.
Everyone keeps saying that.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, there was one add-on that I'm prepared to hear, but this person is going to be restricted time. Donald Knutson, are you present? Please come forward. I'm going to limit you to 5 minutes because we're not going to charge you anything extra for coming late, but we'll give you only 5 minutes.
Thank you very much for your time anyways. I just had a little bit to say is I'm Donald Knutson. I recently moved here about 5 years ago to that. And but I've worked 3 elections as a greeter, I guess you might as well call it. And I found that there's a lot of people that don't vote. We have a big problem with representation of people who want to vote. Not to pick on it, but I worked in Redcliffe one time and Medicine Hat another time. There was a group of Hutterites came in. They were in the wrong place. They should have been in 7 persons. So we need to help immigrants, people who are not the regular, to vote. It'll help our democracy immensely. Okay, they need to know where and who to vote for. We need to have a representative that knows the needs, and there's all, like the previous Mr. Warner said and previous speaker said, that there is a lot of different areas that we need to address. But I think Redcliffe Medicine Hat is a good name, and Medicine Hat Dunmore is a good name. Where you make the split in Medicine Hat, I would say we need to have, like, one of them would be almost all urban. I think Redcliffe Medicine Hat would be a good one. Then take Medicine Hat, Dunmore, and Cypress County. If you want to call it Cypress Medicine Hat, save on paper, we can do it that way. And that would be it.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Knutson. Thanks for picking your hand up late and coming in and presenting. Mr. Evans, any questions or comments?
No, but thank you for your submissions.
Yep. Susan?
No questions, but thank you.
Dr. Martin?
I've been staring at maps a lot recently, as you can imagine, and one of the things I've noticed, and it's a function of our culture, we read from left to right, and that's why the names roll out the way they, Brooks, Medicine Hat, right? Mm-hmm. Cypress Medicine Hat is different than most parts of the province. People who live there should be congratulated on being culturally diverse in that respect. Really, I want to ask you about naming. So what would, in your ideal configurations, what would be the names attached to them?
Well, he said Medicine Hat Redcliffe or Redcliffe Medicine Hat. However you want to read it, would be an urban riding, and Medicine Hat, you can call it Cypress or Dunmore, would be another one. I think you probably all know that there is a economic district that the city of Medicine Hat, Dunmore, and our Cypress County and Redcliffe all are part of, and they are working together already anyway.
Thank you. No questions for me, but thank you very much for coming.
Okay, thank you. Thank you again, Mr. Knutson. You're excused. We'll now adjourn the hearing. We'll stay around. We're happy to talk briefly. And I must say, this, without a doubt, has been the most engaged public hearing we participated in. I'm not saying it to make you feel good. People have stayed. We've had great presentations, great history, and it's been a long week, but it's been a very enjoyable end to the week for us. So thank you very much, everyone, for coming, and we'll write to you in late October, and you'll be able to read what we've come up with. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. They even slapped.